Earth?
Ew. You are not dating anyone from Earth, honey.
Yeah. You do not know where they've been.
They're from the other side of the space tracks.
They raw dog the air. Well, sorry for doing like a 30-minute aside, but...
No, it's all good. Shall we?
Yeah, we shall. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Seriously Loco, the Seriously Crazy fan podcast for El Paso Locomotive FC, a proud member of the Beautiful Game Network, and brought to you by Roughneck Scarves and Icarus FC. I'm your host, Phil Baki. I'm joined tonight by my co-host, Mikka Burrell. Mikka, how are you?
No, not too bad. U.S. men's national team got a pretty regulation win over a Jamaica side that was pretty poor, to be fair, but
Sure.
I'll take anything I can get in World Cup qualifying. And, of course, the El Paso boy, Ricardo Pepi, scored 2 goals, so That was nice.
Yeah, nice little boost, and just I think the U.S. team staying away from keeping Twitter from getting too toxic, like
right.
But yeah, Pepi, the main man. It looks like the U.S. has a 9 now, a legit number 9 for the first time in a while.
I hope so. I mean, like you pointed out when we were watching the game, the defending is bit suspect on both goals, and when he moves, hopefully when, not an if, he moves to Europe, he'll definitely be facing sterner tests, but you can only score the chances in front of you, and he did that. So
well, lots to talk about today, Mikka. We're off the back of a little bit of a weird and kind of bittersweet night for El Paso Locomotive, where they win Copa Tejas, get across that finish line, but after a wild 3-3 draw against San Antonio FC, and one characterized by just some interesting decision making all around, and we'll get into all of the nuts and bolts of that game and how it ended up playing out. And then we'll look ahead to Tulsa later on. But Mikka, I mean, starting out with this 3-3 against San Antonio, I mean, winning Copa Tejas, but ultimately drawing a game that we were objectively poor in the first half, but stormed back in the second, took the lead, and were within like maybe 30 seconds of seeing out a win at home. Lot of different aspects to this one. So I'm just interested in your like general reaction to this match, and does the Copa, like, did that soften any of this for you, or is this result just kind of taken in isolation?
Yeah, it's I spent most of today kind of stewing about it. Obviously, it's very mixed feelings, I think, because, I mean, on one hand, I'm thrilled that we won Copa Tejas, but, without being too disrespectful to the competition, I think it was probably a foregone conclusion, and we were just, seeking that extra point to get it over the line. So I think how do I say this? I think the occasion was a bit marred by the way that the game ended.
Sure.
Because once again, we're in a position to win and we don't. And this is the 4th time in quite a handful of games that we lose a lead late, or, drop points late. Dramatically late, like last kick of the game late, and it's just extremely frustrating. And I think in previous instances where this has happened, the reasons for it were not as clear, but I think in this one you can clearly identify a lot of the issues. I think we've seen some patterns developing in these results that aren't the best. Let's put it into perspective. We still haven't lost very much this season, just twice, as Christian pointed out on the last episode. So,
yeah,
there's something to be said for that. But with a team with our aspirations, it's just simply not good enough right now. And I'm going to try my best to be as analytical about it as possible, not too emotional. But it's hard to like divorce myself from the feelings that these kind of games give me as a fan. We are both, fans.
Yeah.
So it's nice to win the Copa, but just not good enough lately.
Yeah. It's a weird one because, at the beginning of the game, I think we all are thinking this is, at home. We've been kind of struggling. Like, let's get a 3 points on the board and just like professional performance. Like, that's what we're looking for. The way the match started, obviously at 2-0 down pretty early on, I'm thinking like, well, now you're happy with the point. You're obviously not happy with the performance, but from 2-0 down, you're probably happy with the point. But then when you score a third, with 7 minutes to play or 6 minutes to play, and a wonderful third at that through Diego Luna, and you take the lead, now at 3-2 with just a short amount of time to play, and with all of these results that have recently been happening, and as you said, this is the fourth time in our last 8, so half of our last 8 games have ended in us dropping points through a 90th minute or later goal. And so anyways, like that moment where we take the lead, it's again this feeling of, okay, we should be seeing this out. So it was a really weird roller coaster, this match, in that at the beginning of the game, I'm thinking this should be a win. At 2-0 down, I'm thinking, okay, let's try to fight back for the point. At 3-2, I'm thinking, let's just see this out. And then ultimately it ends in the draw and disappointment. So yeah, just a lot of different feelings there. But let's start at the beginning. The lineup is announced. And I think it's safe to say that like we've been very clear about our feelings on the flat 4-4-2 versus the 4-4-2 diamond, and how it operates. But this lineup in particular was even more jarring because of the personnel included in that shape. And I think it all kind of starts with potential playoff spot clinching on the line, Copa Tejas on the line, and it's no disrespect to him, but Ben Beery in goal.
Yeah, I don't understand this one, especially because Logan Kidder does make the bench. Yeah. And I mean, far be it from me to say, like, I don't know that Logan necessarily needed the rest unless he's carrying a knock we don't know about, which, how are we supposed to know that? That's a whole other topic. But Ben Beery is a fascinating choice, and I think it was a difficult night for him, to be fair.
Yeah.
He's not first choice, and it was just bizarre. I don't really know what, and the bizarreness just goes further from there. Yeah. I mean, seeing him on there was a start, but yeah.
Yeah, the other odd thing, obviously, we see Yuma return. I think our back line is enforced, essentially, like Andrew Fox not included.
Right.
And so we see Matt Boehner at center back in for him, pairing with Mishak, Maka and Adair out on the flanks as we'd expect. But in midfield, we see Yuma return next to Nick Ross in a 2. And then even a little stranger than that, we see Brahim deployed on the right, on the right flank, which is, not all that strange for a former right back or, someone who does sparingly play right back for us still. Right. But Jose Aguinaga on the other side, deployed in this kind of wing playmaker role. seemed like he was trying to link things up, but that added a little bit of strangeness to it. And then Leandro Carrijo favored up front in this one to start, where we typically would have seen Lucho. And it's not the first time that, we have seen Leandro start a couple of games here. But Diego Luna starts next to him rather than playing two strikers. So it ends up kind of being like a 4-4-1-1 in practice, or it kind of felt like that, where Diego was kind of drifting into the space behind. But yeah, the whole shape of the team just felt odd. And this 4-4-2, this flat shape as the game started, we were kind of remarking on throughout the beginning stages. We were talking back and forth in the chat about the fact that it felt like we were outnumbered all over the pitch, which no matter what, there's 11 players on both sides. We can't be outnumbered everywhere.
Yeah, no, it definitely felt like we were outnumbered in every phase of play. And I do want to give credit to San Antonio FC for that, because I think for the first 15, 20 minutes, the press was relentless.
Yeah.
They really came out of the blocks just wanting to get physical, wanting to get touch tight to guys. We couldn't get out of our half. They were targeting some of the slower players on our team, and they were just a nightmare. The only good thing about that, I suppose, is that it was ultimately unsustainable.
Right.
But it was a terrible way to start at home with so much on the line in front of your fans. And, the 4-4-2 flat, like, I'll continue to bang this drum. It's not for me.
Yeah.
And in this instance, I think it's even worse considering the personnel that we saw on the pitch. Nick Ross, I mean, I think he can do a job pretty much anywhere in midfield that you ask him to. Mm-hmm. I think definitely with three in the midfield, his strengths will be accentuated, but you cannot put him next to Yuma. And in fact, you can't put Yuma next to anyone but Richie Ryan, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I think he just needs protection there, or someone to support him, or someone more, just more experienced. I don't know. Yuma just does not work for me there. And I think he gets booked and gets hooked at halftime.
Yeah.
They were targeting him. He was one of the press triggers very clearly, I think.
Yeah.
And not to completely crap on the guy, he still had pretty good passing stats, all things considered. But
sure,
there were a lot of safe passes, a lot of passes back to the keeper, a lot of passes just backwards in general, not the way that we're accustomed to playing. And I think it had everything to do with the shape.
Yeah.
Just he and Nick kind of getting isolated away from their wingers ostensibly, and outnumbered.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I cannot stand this 4-4-2 flat.
And I think you bring up an interesting point there, because and maybe we can talk about it a little bit more as we talk more about the first half. But Yuma, typically as the 6 in our 4-4-2 diamond, you kind of automatically have either the center back, like in terms of close proximity, you have back passes to the center backs available, or if you're receiving the ball from the center backs, you can either go back to them, or you have two, 8s, or however you want to think about those freer central midfielders,
right,
either side of you, who are options in terms of outlets to break the press. And once they keyed on Yuma in some of these instances, he had either Nick, who was also being covered by a presser,
yeah,
or the center backs, who are also being pressed. The wingers aren't really an option, because spraying those flat balls out to the wing, you run the risk of turning the ball over and putting everybody in a bad situation regardless. So, which we did a handful of times in the first half, because we've started to feel like that was our only outlet. But they're so far out that it's really hard to link when you're playing that really tight press, and that really and it was a suffocating press from San Antonio. So I think, to me, it's just Yuma needs options.
Right.
And any of our midfielders, when they're being pressed like that, especially when you're playing in that 6 role, or as that pivot, you need protection and you need options. And he's very exposed in the 4-4-2.
Exactly. Yeah.
And yeah, so talking about the personnel, Kevin Quintana, our good friend of the show, asked, and you can find him at _KCQ94 on Twitter. He asked, was the lineup something tactical in a sense of resting certain players, or was it actually something new that we were trying to confuse San Antonio in the style of play? Also, including not playing Logan. I think, Kevin on the same page as us, just a little bit of a head scratcher in such a big game, unless there's some, unknown injury concern. But yeah, Kevin's question essentially, is this something that Mark was doing to rotate, or do you think that he was trying to target something specific with San Antonio, the way San Antonio sets up?
Well, when we played Colorado, that side was pretty rotated too. So I spoke last week about how I felt that we would play more of the ideal starting 11, if you will, of who's available. So to see that we kind of didn't do that again was really strange. And so that led me to believe that it is something that maybe was overthought.
Sure.
I think maybe Mark or maybe the staff galaxy brained it and really tried to pick a lineup that as Kevin puts it, might confuse the opposition or give them something else to think about, something that they didn't plan for. But either way, it was just bizarre when it dropped at 6:00. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I was really excited for this lineup because everything about it was just strange. I mean, so many players out of natural positions. In a system that we pretty much have made clear that we dislike. So yeah, it does feel kind of like we maybe overthought this one because, and maybe to be fair to the club, I think there is a concern as the playoffs get closer. We are getting a lot of these injuries, a lot of recurring ones, a lot of new ones too, and I'm sure we'll get onto that. So, but at the same time, you have to also keep some of these guys in a match rhythm, because if they sit one too many games, that's not good for them either. So, I'm not the expert who's seeing them on the training pitch every day, but this lineup was not my cup of tea.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, to be fair, to us and to fans watching, this 4-4-2 shape has led in these past two games to three of the worst halves of football that Locomotive have played all season. Both halves against Colorado and this first half. This first half being by far the most diabolical of all of them.
Horrible.
This was the worst half that I think I haven't seen Locomotive play this poorly since season 1. I can say that quite confidently.
Well, which is also problematic because we literally said last week this was the first time we saw them outplayed against Colorado. Now we're saying that that's been beaten already. Good Lord. But continue.
No, and I was going to say that I think obviously I'm not Mark, and we are both huge fans of Mark Lowry, and I want to emphasize that throughout this, that we're not simply slating Mark or whatever, because ultimately there has to be execution. But the bottom line is that the way that this lineup came out, I think personnel wise, even if we imagine a world where every single change was enforced, I think you can deploy this same set of personnel in the diamond and keep a consistency system-wise that leads to the lesser disruption that is caused naturally by injuries. Injuries are naturally going to disrupt the side. You're not going to have every single player available all the time. But if you're playing a system consistently, that level of unfamiliarity with how the system is going to play out on the field and how you're going to link up with those players, it may not be the same guy in that position, but the patterns that exist in the system, and you'll be able to recognize those even when someone else is occupying that position. So for me, if you deploy this as a diamond with the same back four, and then Yuma in the 6 with Rebellon and Aguinaga either side, Nick Ross in the 10, and then Diego in a free like second striker role with Carrijo, I think this first half goes at least a little better. I'm not saying it would have been like gangbusters and we would have like blown their doors off or something like that just by changing the shape. But I think we avoid the disaster of the first half if you deploy it just slightly differently, even with the same personnel.
Agree 100%, because again, the diamond gives you a natural, at least a numerical matchup, if not an advantage, depending on how your opposition is playing. And my God, the 4-4-2, like we don't have the personnel to play that position in that formation effectively. I think you really need two really solid athletic pivots to play that. And we don't have that. Yeah. And that's why you see a lot of like younger sides and MLS 2 sides play a 4-4-2. That works for them. Mm-hmm. Works for New Mexico United. They have, not this season, but like maybe in season past, 1 or season 2 in the past, where they do have less technical players, but athletes.
Yeah.
And playing that flat 4-4-2 is fine because they can cover that ground when the wingers push up. I completely agree. I think there was a way to rejig this in a way that put us in the diamond with that same personnel. It just didn't highlight anyone's strengths in particular. Yeah.
So the disaster that was the first half, and I mean, I think we're maybe even being kind that it was a disaster. We start with a question from Eric Bauer at eBau27. He said, incredible fight back from the squad as usual, but how worrying is it that they were so flat in the first half? At times, it looked like we couldn't be bothered to defend. I'll use this to start off the conversation of the goals. I don't know that it's bothered to defend, Mikka, but it felt like we were slow to react to what was happening around us. And in the first goal in particular, it looks like most of the team is moving in slow motion, to include Ben Beery, who unfortunately spills the ball straight into Justin Dillon's path for an easy tap-in.
Yeah, Dillon's becoming a bit of a menace for El Paso Locomotive by now.
Devin Sandoval head ass.
Oh my God, the in-state version, that in-state tuition. Yeah, I don't know if it wasn't that we couldn't be bothered to defend. And in fact, I think saying flat is actually quite complimentary. I thought we were less than flat. I thought we were dominated.
Yeah.
When I think of flat, I think of like us not playing to our strengths rather than, San Antonio having imposed themselves on us like they did. If from where I was sitting in the dugout, you could see on the players' faces like kind of a bewilderment about the whole thing. Like, are they really doing this to us? Like in our home, on our night? There was this like, I think you're exactly right, Phil. Like it wasn't like computing to them what was happening, and they were getting completely. I mean, Dylan, Epps, all those players were just closing down, and there was a lot of last ditch defending too. I mean, I think Borelli someone does put their body in the way for what could have been another early goal for San Antonio, but didn't do well enough to protect Ben Bowery, unfortunately. And I mean, what can we expect from him, really? He's the second keeper, Does Logan maybe gather that? I think probably so. But either way, you got to be clearing that. You got to be helping him out a little bit more. That his second start ever?
Second, yeah. First was against Vegas as well, which, I mean, barely a football club, to be honest.
Fair. I don't know. I don't know that I'd ever say Mark Lowry said wouldn't be bothered to defend. I think they were just bad. I think San Antonio were just imposing themselves on us in a way that we were shocked to have to confront.
Yeah. In fairness to Locomotive, Gallegos is obviously an extremely talented young player. But he goes past multiple Locomotive players on the opener with ease. And it's not to say that he's extremely capable of that sort of thing. But I think that's another trend that's been like somewhat worrying, is that it seems like it's been happening more that we're getting dribbled through. And in this case, he gets the shot away and then everybody's just slow to react and Dylan just stabs home. But throughout this whole passage, he has Maka and Aginaga actually on either side of him, and they both, like, neither of them really commit to making an actual challenge. Right. And that's how he's able to like ghost between them. And then by that time he's into the area, no one can actually make a legit challenge for fear of bringing him down. And yeah, he gets the shot away and it's spilled. And I think it's honestly a very similar look for the second, because I can't even remember. I think it's like, I don't even know, like Lindley or someone who goes down the left-hand side, but he just like goes past everyone. And the thing that I noticed while I was watching is Maka is actually pointing for someone to pick up a runner. And while he's like looking away, I know it's like sounds so playground, but he's literally like looking the other direction, and Lindley just like goes down the line, like past him, while he's trying to like direct traffic. And yeah, it was just all those sorts of moments where like everything that was happening around us seemed like a total surprise. Like every movement that anyone was making, like we weren't anticipating a thing. And it just like everybody's brain was just like operating a half a second slower, it felt like, than everybody on San Antonio. And that's, I think, I think that led to this feeling of being like overwhelmed and just feeling like we were flat or not bothered to defend. I think like it ultimately came down to we just were not anticipating anything that San Antonio was throwing at us.
Right. Yeah.
So the predictability of this, I guess, like was part of what we were talking about, because it had this weird quality, and like watching the broadcast, the goals had this weird quality because San Antonio's reactions to both goals were so muted that Duke thought the first one was offside, and it's no discredit to Duke because he legit thought Dylan was offside because he didn't celebrate. So he's like, well, it must be like being disallowed, because why is he not going crazy for scoring a goal in the, whatever, like the 8th minute of this like Copa Tejas match. But that was what was so strange about the whole thing, is San Antonio was they were very casual.
They're very businesslike.
Yeah. Yeah, they were. They were like, they showed up like they expected this to happen, which was troubling, because most teams are showing up to the swap just not in the face. And San Antonio came in and they had a plan in the first half and they executed it.
Yeah, to perfection. And I don't even know what else to say anymore. I think this is the most credit we'll have to give to the opposition, that they came to play more for the occasion than we did in that first half, and that's really troubling because I don't know. I think in the past Mark has even used the term mentality monsters, but I just don't see that right now.
Yeah.
And I want to read our good friend Austin Young. I want to read his thread because I think it was on point. I should have pulled it up beforehand, but I mean, he couldn't have said it better. I couldn't have said it better myself, I should say. So Austin says, I know people are going to give me hate, but I don't care. Yes, the Locomotive won Copa Tejas, but there is no way we can be satisfied with the way the club has been playing recently. Multiple goals given up in stoppage time. This is unacceptable. 3 out of the last 4 matches have resulted in Locomotive dropping a total of 6 points due to goals given up in stoppage time. Those 6 points would have Locomotive 1 point behind Phoenix with a game in hand. This is unacceptable and hope the club turns this around. This is not the form to be in right now before heading into the playoffs. I love this club and want them to play to what they are capable of. So, I mean, I can't argue with any of that, first of all.
Facts.
But second of all, that really puts into perspective what we've left on the table here.
Yeah.
Having previously been so close, or, having had the potential previously to be so close to Phoenix for that home field advantage. So it's just extremely disappointing that we have... I guess we still do, but we've had fate in our hands and just let it slip with these draws.
Yeah.
And in such like just in a fashion that just pisses people off. You know what I mean?
And it's so uncharacteristic. Like, that's the thing. Until that San Antonio, like, I can't think of aside from the Western Conference Final in season 1, I can't think of a late goal that we've given up until that San Antonio winner in San Antonio. Like, that started this whole thing that we talked about last time. Like, until that goal, I really can't think of a whole lot of daggers in our hearts. Like, season 1, we had a couple, but really since that Western Conference Final, we haven't had that sort of late mental lapse or whatever. And now it's become a thing.
Well, and I like to think that these things are not that deep, but
Sure.
We have seen it in much higher levels of the game. I think of Bayer Leverkusen last year in the Bundesliga. They were flying. They beat themselves essentially against Bayern Munich, and their season went to shit.
Yeah.
And everyone commented oh my gosh, mentally, that Bayern match did something to them, and that's just one example I can think of recently.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. I guess there is something to that, that Dylan goal down in San Antonio has snowballed, and it's really just frustrating.
We'll have to talk more about that as we get on to the late equalizer, but we do have an uplifting part of this match, which is at halftime, Mark wastes no time. He makes 2 subs. He brings off Yuma and Aguinaga, brings on Josue Aron Gomez and Dylan Maris. I'm thinking okay, he's brought on Dylan, he's brought on Jose. We have been left with a no midfield, just vibes, but that wasn't actually the case. We switched to a diamond, and it was Gomez and Carrillo up top with Luna in the 10 behind them, and then Ross, Rebellon, and Maris was the midfield 3.
Right.
And before we get on to the goals, those changes at the half and the change of shape, and particularly the performances of Dylan Maris in a midfield 3 rather than in his usual kind of 10 role, and Josue Aron Gomez, who obviously neither of them get goals or anything like that, but their impact on this game was to the point of leaving me mad that they didn't start on their behalf, just because Maris and Gomez do make such a difference, especially at the start of the second half. Just in Maris's ability to control the ball in midfield and link the play, which we were just completely lacking in the first half. And then Josue Aron Gomez, when he is in the mood, he will bully people.
For sure.
Omar Salgado style. He will back down a defender, turn him, and actually just absolutely leave him in his wake. And so those 2 impacts, I just wanted to call out before we get on to the goals, the change in personnel, but primarily this change of shape, for me, it just hit immediately that we were, without any sort of other game state changes, there wasn't a red for San Antonio or anything like that. Without any other game state changes, there no goals, our performance improved so drastically after that change. It's why do we not just do this? And I know there's more to it than that, but the shape immediately change this game.
Absolutely. And I mean, we gave credit to the club for that last pod about how the good trend that we've seen is the subs actually making the impacts that they're supposed to. But then it's like in this one, we pulled 2 people at halftime, which is like, this is not going well, right? Yeah. 2 senior players come off, and on one hand, that's great that we address the change and we don't just like let the rock continue.
Sure.
But yeah, I'm with you. Why don't we just start with that and nip it in the bud early and then manage the game? Why do we have to mount like this dramatic comeback? And it's entertaining. I'm sure the people that were in the stadium that are more casual fans or whatever, like, were just happy to like see the fight back, and so was I. Like, to be fair, but
of course.
We were hoping for a little bit more, I think, of a smooth ride to the Copa Tejas. But no, I totally echo your sentiments about Josue. I think he's really come on in leaps and bounds in his all-around game. Mm-hmm. I mean, up in Colorado, he was the one making space for people and actually passing the ball really well.
Yeah.
And this one, he has a really good impact. Both he and Dylan Maris, over 90% of their passes hit the target. Dylan actually gets an assist. We know he's been struggling recently, so that's nice for him.
Yeah.
And yeah, 2 really good changes. You just have to wonder why it's necessary.
Yeah. And I know Dylan's coming back to fitness, and that could be a thing too, where, maybe he was only fit to do a half, and, maybe Mark wanted to try to preserve him if he can. Totally understand the personnel side, but the shape making immediately like so much difference, and Gomez, like, and maybe it's Mark seeing that, hey, we need Gomez down the stretch, and there's this injury bug that's going around, so like, let's protect the Luchos and the Josues, like, to make sure we've got goals in us, come the end of the season. But let's talk about the goals themselves. I mean, the first goal is, we kind of have to admit, like, we get a little bit of luck in that Maka King like gets his head on this ball and directs it towards the goal. But Matt Boehner is trying to score, and him whiffing actually allows the Maka header to go in.
It was like a dummy diving header from Matt Boehner. Well, let's talk about even before that, though, because the corner leads, it comes from Matt Cardoni's mistake.
Yeah.
He totally misplays the ball and puts it out for a corner against his own side. And I remember texting the group, like, I was like, this felt important that he did that. And I felt like the crowd felt it too.
Yeah.
Like, okay, here's the armor starting to crack. We can take advantage of this. And sure enough, we did. And it's a really great, he heads the ball down and passed Matt Cardoni. I think Boehner does enough to like kind of put him off without fouling him necessarily. That's a nice goal. It's a nice way to get us back into the game. We needed and actually Christian said right before, is like, we just need something like scrappy, like something dirty, just needs to cross the line.
Yeah.
And that's what it did. So
no, it's a good point. And it completely changes the momentum of the game. I think the thing about Cardoni's mistake too is that mistake, along with his goalkeeping, like towards the end of this one, I actually do think on balance, I think has a worse outing than Ben Beery on the other end, which is weird to say, but I do think his goalkeeping was poor, like in the second half. And I think the second goal as well, Nick Ross, obviously no one here at Seriously Loco is going to want to like take anything away from Nick Ross scoring. Nick Ross takes 2 lovely touches on a ball that's kind of cleared out to him. Two just really great touches, and fires the ball to the near post. The reality of the situation is Cardoni gets a hand to it, and he really should be saving it. Nick does well to put it on target. but Cardoni probably should be getting there. But all of a sudden, it's 3-2 or it's 2-2, and we're thinking like, there's something happening here, like with 15 minutes to go.
Yeah, no, I mean, always happy for Nick to score, and I think he's been scoring quite a bit. So for him anyway, so always happy to see Nicky on the score sheet. But I agree, Matt Cardoni, he needs to have a stronger hand to that, and it's not even. I'm not even criticizing it's your near post. You should never get beat at your near post. That's a myth. First of all,
yeah, of course.
But second of all, I think it's just he needs to be stronger there. I think he lost a little bit of focus. He thought that might. And, I don't remember if he was necessarily unsighted. I mean, there definitely was a mass of bodies, in front of him, but he should save that. I agree. And yeah, just gets through him. But yeah, it's, I'm happy to see that we're able to battle back and that we do get the bounces, that we kind of create our own luck in that way, but doesn't last, does it?
Well, before we get on to all that, and actually before we get on to the Luna goal, trying to keep this like mildly whatever chronological, but on the hour mark, Mishak pulls up, and obviously, you can speculate about what's going on, but the reality of the situation and the images that I saw on the stream was he goes down. He's down for a while. And then when he does get back up, he was hopping on his one leg, unable to put he doesn't put any pressure or walk off on his right leg, I think. And from the way that he pulled up in the stream, like watching on stream, it does. I mean, I would have guessed hamstring, but we're not sure really like what's gone on. But it looked like a hamstring went up. Like as soon as he pulls up, you're like
hamstring. Yeah, no, that's our understanding from inside this, from inside the stadium, is that he hurt his hamstring in whatever. I don't know if it was a collision or what. I don't remember exactly what happened, that if it was off the ball or whatnot, but it's a hamstring and it's looking like he'll be out for a little bit, which is, I say a little bit, but that probably means longer.
Yeah.
It's a crying shame because he is our last fit center back by trade. I mean, yes, Yuma's back, and I'm sure we'll see him. I actually hope we see him back in the back line rather than in midfield, if it can be helped, because I thought that he actually was had adapted to that role very well. But Mishak was our last center back on paper that was healthy.
Yeah.
And it's just such a shame. Because I think he's been one of the more consistent performers for us over the season. Even in some of these bad stretches, like he's still out there making the last ditch save, or making the last ditch interventions, and passing the ball very well. And he looked very much in pain and upset. And we know that Mishak can take a lot of a beating over the season, so it looked pretty serious, and that's something you never want to see.
And I mean, the reality of the situation is we're less than a month, or we're like about a month from the start of the playoffs. So like any injury is likely going to carry, like any significant injury that's not just a knock, is going to carry into the postseason likely. So that, a potentially very bitter blow for Locomotive that is now down to, no fit center backs.
When Mark said that he really liked Liverpool, I don't think he meant it like this.
Right? Like all the center backs getting hurt. Like who's on the Locos Academy that can fill in at CB? Like,
good Lord.
There's another injury too that we'll get to in a second, but right before Brian Rebillon ends up getting forced off with what looks like a head injury, he nearly finds the third with a ridiculous first time left-footed shot curling towards the top corner, and he's extremely unlucky that it hits the crossbar and goes out. But I mean, what a hit from Bryan.
Oh my God, on the left boot too. And it was really good play beforehand by Luna to kind of like dribble all those guys, combined with Carrillo, lay it off. Man, just inches from being a banger. And one that we deserved, because I think we were on top at that point in the game.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And sorry if you can hear my little dog yapping. She's upset that Bryan missed that goal. But yeah, from our angle, that was actually one of the few times I was happy to be like in the dugout, because you could see the trajectory of that ball very clearly from where we were sitting, and my heart stopped when it hit the post. But you know, maybe next time.
Yeah, a little unlucky from Bryan, but he is forced off with, I mean, it looked like a head injury on stream, but is that what you guys saw down there on the field, or did you see what happened with Bryan?
Christian mentioned to me that they were looking like they were doing like the protocols, but I don't know. He was able to kind of like walk off and looked okay, but that one was less clear to me.
So that meant that the end of the match, the right side of our back line, which had started as Mishek and Maka, ended up as Maka at center back and Zacharias at right back. So yeah, like some significant changes, obviously, in both injury and force later in the game. And that brings us to Moon Boy, Star Boy, Diego Luna, whatever your nickname for him, Diego Coin.
Diego Coin.
We see just another moment of magic from Diego, and what should have been a decisive moment. Gets a little bit of luck. The ball from Maris gets deflected. That was actually he was trying to play it out to the left to Borelli, I think. It gets deflected into the path of Luna, and just a fantastic touch to get it under control. And then the ability and the improvisation of using the outside of the right boot to take an early shot and catch Cardoni completely out, because I think he's probably looking for him to try to get that onto his left and shoot back across. But he goes to the far post like basically a stride early, catches Cardoni completely out, and the right-footed finish with the outside of the boot. I mean, the kid's just continues to be ridiculous on a weekly basis.
A joke, man. 7 goals, 4 assists now on 25 matches. And yeah, I loved the strike. Quaresma vibes with the outside of the boot. That's one of my favorite kind of techniques in the game, and he really strikes that one just real nice. Yeah, you're right. It does bounce kindly. But again, with the Nick Ross goal, I felt that we were very much in the game and creating our own luck with some of the bounces. Yeah, I don't know. It's a sharp angle too, so I almost think Cardoni probably should react a little faster as well.
Yeah.
But just another really great contribution from the youngster, and I just wish that his teammates could have held on to it for him.
Well, and so, yeah, what should have been the decisive moment from Diego is ultimately snuffed out by a late San Antonio equalizer. As we said, it's the 4th time in 8 games, or the 3rd in 4. God,
that sounds so much worse.
Yeah, that's bad. As Austin pointed out, the goal itself is shocking in its construction, because the ball is with a defender. Like, it is at the halfway line for San Antonio, and Mitch Tainer plays just a hopeful ball into the box. Like, he's not trying to do anything with this aside from put it into the box. He hits this like flat trajectory, and as as Courtney Ford is making this run in from the right, Eder Borelli is in position. Like, he has the ability to step in front of this and cut it out. Because it's floated in. Like, it's not...
Right.
It's not a like hard driven cross, or it's not from close range or something like that. Like, he has the time to deal with this, and he just lets Ford ghost in front of him, and Ford makes a great contact with this diving header. And like, there's questions of I have questions of Beery, because Beery is like off his feet when Ford makes contact with the header. Like, he's not set. So he can't do anything really. Like, he gets a hand to it, but he can't actually save it because he's not prepared to make a save.
Right.
But he shouldn't have to, I guess, is like what it comes down to. Like, Borelli should 100% deal with this. And it's just like, it's just so it's bad enough that the concession, like, that we concede this goal with 2 minutes to go in stoppage time again. But the fact that it's from nothing, like, San Antonio didn't do something in particular to create that goal. This is a gift. Like, doesn't come from an impressive piece of play. It doesn't come, like, the header is good, but the ball into the box is hopeful at best. And we just have to deal with it. Like, we just have to.
Yeah. I think I echo everything you say that Borelli needs to do better there. And also, like, he's like, I'm watching it again because I just can't believe it. Yeah. He just dives across from him, goes across his shoulder, and it goes in. Like, I don't understand that play.
No.
Like, it's a great bit of improvisation, I guess, from San Antonio FC, but
yeah.
Borelli and why is your back turned to your man in that position? I don't understand. And it's weird because Borelli's been very, very good in recent games. But I don't know. And everyone's just kind of staring too. Like, who is supporting him there?
Right.
Because he's out. If you watch it back, we're like outnumbered in that area of the pitch as per for this game. But yeah, just poor all the way around. Again, the game management just leaves so much to be desired, and I don't know what is or isn't being said to these players in these moments. Like, I don't know what the magic words are, to make them focus and just see a game out. It's incredibly aggravating.
At Eric Bauer asked as well, how concerned are you with how often we have given up those late goals? Are we just losing focus in the final moments, or how do we go about fixing this issue?
Yeah, we're absolutely losing focus in the final moments because I don't know what else it could be. How can you be that unlucky 4 times in 8 matches?
Yeah.
We are, and again, gifting our opponents as well these opportunities in these positions where they can nick something. And more often than not lately, they do. Mm-hmm. How do we go about fixing the issue? That is a question for Mark Lowry and co. I wish I knew what exactly the answer was, but I do think it is a management thing. I do think it is something that needs to be spoken about on the training ground, and I'm sure it is. Mark was, we were on the pitch for the trophy lifting, and that was great, but he was cutting a pretty sullen figure out there. He was pissed.
Yeah.
I think it's safe to say.
Yeah.
And I heard from others around the club that he was very furious with the things that had gone on in the game and the injury to Mishak and,
yeah,
a lot of things just kind of tainted the night.
Yeah. Yeah. Mitchell tainted the night.
For real though.
I have like a lot of thoughts around this, and actually as a Liverpool fan, I feel like I'm quite qualified to speak on like late defensive frailty as somebody who endured the like Brendan Rodgers and early Jurgen Klopp years where it was just like meme worthy. There's something about late substitutes and that are made with the idea of going more defensive And there used to be this thing, Klopp used to do this thing all the time. And you could like in his first couple of years with Liverpool, you could nail on like, okay, Liverpool are about to concede, because he would make a substitution where he would bring off an attacker and bring on a center back, and it was always Joel Mata, like, who got brought on like at that time or in that era. He would be brought on in like the 92nd minute or whatever for an attacker, and it just totally changed like how you're defending set pieces, how you're defending more generally, how you're like possessing the ball. And so the change happens like right after Diego scores the goal to take the lead. He gets brought off for Lucho, and obviously not a strictly like defensive substitution, but I genuinely think that sub gets made because Lucho is tall. Like, I think they started thinking like, okay, inevitably, like when there's a cross into the box or a set piece, like we will have another big body in there to deal with it. Like, I genuinely think that's why the sub gets made. And I think that this is like, not only is it a mental thing and a management thing, I think we've been pulled into it. Like, I think we now as a club, like, and I say we so broadly, obviously it has nothing to fucking do with me, but like,
kind of does.
As a club, I think, and as a fan base, as a, like, I'm talking the club in the broadest sense, like every single person in there who has watched Locomotive with any regularity felt an anxiety as that match entered the final moments with a 1-goal lead, because the last few matches, like, we have just shown this frailty in those moments. And it almost feels like we're so wrapped up in it mentally that we just can't avoid it at the moment. Like, it is just happening because there's almost like this focus on it. And I think at some point, like, in terms of solving the problem, I think you just have to emphasize the fact that, one, like, this is not something that we've historically done. And just because it happened once, like, doesn't mean that it's going to happen again. Like, follow your assignments. When the ball comes into the box, head it out. Like, I know it sounds stupid, but like, we just haven't done that. Like, we let the ball pinball, we let it find the man. Like, we don't stop the cross. We don't, like, all the simple, stupid things that people yell, like, that is the stupid, simple things that we need to do in those final moments. Like, not fouling people on the edge of the area, not, letting someone drift across to the back post, like, without anyone even competing for the ball. Like, Borelli needs to be attacking the header, like, at its highest point, all of those things that they teach you, like, just put him off at all, follow the runner, any of the things that, like, it's just like so devastating when it keeps happening. And it feels like the more it happens, the more that the likelihood just keeps increasing because we're so caught up in it. Like, rather than just focusing on following our assignments and like doing the things that make us a good team.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know that I can argue too much with you there, because it's happening over and over again, and I feel like teams they must sense it. They must sense this vulnerability.
I felt there was a moment San Antonio had a shot from distance right before they scored the goal. I can't remember who it was who has the shot, and it's right at Burry. He saves it, like, credit to him. And it's from distance, but because it was from so far out, Burry wasn't in frame. Like, he wasn't in the frame of the shot on stream. So when the guy took the shot and it was headed towards goal, I assumed, I am a long way away from El Paso, but I assumed it was going in. Like, I felt like we were going to concede. And that just, like, that feeling, and that like air, it felt that tension was in the stadium too. Like the idea, people who watched the team consistently felt an anxiety around, is it going to happen again? And like, I think for a moment I let myself believe, right, that like we're going to see this out. Not at home. This doesn't happen at home. We don't do this at home type thing. And I think the anxiety just crept up to a level where, yeah, for a split second, everybody's brain shuts off and 3-3 and, you know, the comeback, you know, is undone at least slightly. And just a single point at home.
I mean, the conclusion that I've come to through all of this is that this team is properly rattled.
Yeah.
And that is, you know, again, all the normal kind of mitigating factors, the fixture pileup, the injuries, blah, blah, blah. Doesn't matter. They are rattled.
Yeah.
They look rattled. And it's really hard to get a team back on track from that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if there's anyone that can do it, it's Mark Lowry.
Of course.
And again, perspective, it's not like we're losing, but yeah, they do look mentally just like shook.
And hopefully claiming silverware, like maybe it energized them a little bit, brought them back to, hey, okay, we know who we are. We've had a really good season. I think the injuries are going to make it tough over this run-in.
Certainly.
I do think I think it, you know, obviously we have to talk about the whole game. We have to talk about the fact that the first half was disappointing. But if I'm Mark, I'm going into this week or these next few days of training before we play again. I'm going into these next couple of days. Like, if I'm watching film, like, we're definitely going to watch the bad stuff, but I'm going to lean really heavily on the fact that for 40 minutes, like, we were El Paso Locomotive that we've been this season. Like, for 40 minutes or 49 minutes of the second half, we were exactly who we've been this whole time. We dominated San Antonio in every facet of the second half. We created a ton and we exerted ourselves. Like we willed ourselves into a winning position. And we can do that. Like we can do that to teams. The reality of the situation is that we can't like sabotage ourselves then, especially when we're facing all of these other adversities with injuries and the fixture congestion. We simply can't be the reason. Like as a team, we can't be the reason that we drop points or that we can't lose concentration. We can't like miss in these moments because we can be that team that dominates and asserts ourselves. But if we're our own undoing, then none of that ultimately matters. So we just have to focus on being the team that we have been. And when we execute as they did throughout the second half, up until that final kick of the game or head of the game, we will continue to win matches. We gotta extend that performance across a 90 plus minutes.
Absolutely.
Well, Mikka, I think maybe now would be a good time for a breather. A little bit of a...
The listeners probably need one too.
Hopefully that was cathartic for everyone. And we obviously had some, stuff to work through, but we'll take a quick break and then we'll be back just real quick to talk about the game against Tulsa coming up this weekend. Welcome back to Seriously Loco. Mikka, we got Tulsa coming up and we're in Tulsa for this one. Tulsa, maybe a little unlucky recently, but winless in 4. And most recently winless at the hands of El Paso Locomotive loanee Niall Logue and Memphis 901 FC 3-0 on October 2nd. But a little bit of a weird one where FC Tulsa not coming in great form, but we're not in great form, especially on the road. And Tulsa will have had a week off, whereas obviously we're coming off of this midweek game against San Antonio. So how are you feeling going into a matchup against these? I guess it's only our second game of the season against a Eastern Conference foe.
Yeah, it'll be an interesting one for sure. I mean, we've had, 3 separate times that we've played FC Tulsa. Should have played them more over the COVID season, but obviously we're not able to.
Yeah.
We've never lost to them. So,
shout out.
I mean, that bodes well. That bodes well, I think. But it does feel like everyone we're facing lately is having the benefit of rest. So, yeah. We travel for this one, don't we?
Yeah, we're on the road for this one.
Yeah, so, I mean, that's also not ideal because we know that we've been pretty trash on the road.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm hoping that we'll be able to just repeat history and get business done. This went to the wire in the quarterfinal last year, but obviously with this one, we'll just be needing a result in regulation time. Tulsa's not really great defensively. They are capable of being beaten at home, as you just mentioned, having pretty much been smashed by Memphis at home. Niall helping keep the clean sheet for the visitors. So yeah, I give us a shout, but yeah, it's gonna be tough, I think, in a lot of ways, because we're gonna have to really again reshuffle the pack because the injuries have mounted, and I'm fascinated to see what the back line looks like, because that will inform the rest of the choices, to be fair, for midfield. Attack is a little bit more straightforward. I think we are blessed that we do have still quite a bit of options up there, but the rest of the team is really just hurting right now in other areas of the pitch. So yeah, be interesting to see how we approach this one. But yeah, I give us a chance to beat them.
Yeah, I think for the back line, obviously, well, and I mean, as I'm just looking down the injury, or just feeling out, I guess, the injury list, or what I presume is the injury list. Mishak likely out. Bryam, I would probably list as like questionable based on the injury. We'll obviously see how the next couple of days play out, but anytime there's a head injury, obviously there's going to be a little bit of caution. Richie's out, obviously, for the foreseeable. Foxy was listed as a head injury at the beginning of this game, which that is new, I think. Because obviously he's been battling recurring injuries like all season, but they weren't head related. Seba Velasquez was in the stands for this match against San Antonio, so not necessarily a great sign for his return. But it does seem like Maris is fit again. Yuma only plays obviously the first half, so in a different system, maybe we do have him fit to play either at center back or at defensive mid. I think probably what we're likely to see is a Boehner Yuma pairing in central defense, with, I think, Cole Turner is likely to see another start, which would make it 2 out of 3 starts for Turner and his third overall appearance. Or fourth overall appearance, I think. He's played every game since he's joined the club, and I don't think that'll slow down with the Richie injury. So
true.
Shout out to Cole Turner, by the way, too, because he had I would say it's kind saying he had a rough game against Colorado Springs. Didn't cope that well, but looked really actually very good in my mind when he came on in this game against San Antonio, and he lets fly for what could have been the third goal, and actually narrowly misses not that long after Bryam let his rip with the left foot. So little bit of a shot on him too. But yeah, I think it's probably a Yuma Boehner central defensive pairing with Cole Turner getting the start in midfield. I think the Brian makes it tough. Nick Ross plays 90 minutes, on Wednesday night. So
yeah,
is he going to start, or do we see Aguinaga? That's another question mark in midfield. And then I do think we'll almost certainly see Josue Aron Gomez and Lucho Soloniak. I think Diego, he's been playing a lot. And almost goes just shy of the full 90 minutes. So couple of question marks in there, I think, just fitness wise between Nick and Diego, but obviously this lineup we're working a little bit threadbare at the moment, like not in every single position, but in most, and some other positions are starting to be impacted by these defensive injuries.
Yeah, man, it's really unfortunate. I think the squad was already kind of small to begin with, and now we're really stretched. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens. I don't know. It's just kind of like a bit unpredictable right now. I know, and that's what we're going to get onto next, but
yeah, and we will have to make our predictions despite the unpredictability. Just a fun fact about Tulsa, they don't draw. They have 12 wins, 11 losses, and 3 draws this season. So that's that they absolutely don't like. They don't like a tie out there in Oklahoma. But Dario Suarez has been like their main goal scoring threat with 9. But the thing about this Tulsa team is that they spread the wealth like pretty significantly. They have him on 9. I think Rodrigo da Costa has 8. Marlon has 7. So they not dissimilar to Locomotive. They have, a handful of players who are all in that sort of goal scoring area of spreading the goals around. Certainly not a Colorado Springs situation.
Yeah, for sure. They have a lot of talented attackers in this side, but leave a lot to be desired. I think defensively, I think they've conceded like 41 goals, which is yikes. I think that's like almost twice what we've conceded. But that's where we'll be able to get at them is in the defense, but they can certainly score. And on top of Rodrigo da Costa having 8 goals, he also has 4 assists, and Marlon with 4 as well, Dario with 3. So the 3 of them really are interchanging a lot with one another to create for this Tulsa side.
The memery of the Eastern Conference Central Division is that Tulsa have a negative 3 goal differential, but they're in 3rd in the division. So, anyways, meanwhile, Colorado Springs are in 3rd in the mountain with a plus 14. So anyways, there's levels to this shit.
There's absolutely levels. Division of death.
So, FC Tulsa, at their home stadium. I think it's like Oni OK.
One Oak or One
Oak.
I don't know.
I feel like different commentators have said different things. One OK. One Oak.
Antioch.
We'll say Antioch. Antioch. So yeah, in Tulsa for that one, Mikka, for prediction wise, like away match, definitely a tough one. Short rest, injury hit Locomotive side, but against a Tulsa side that concedes a lot of goals and does not draw.
Yeah. I hope there will be less chaos, but I don't know that we'll win. I'll go 1-1 draw with, I think you kind of have to play Lucho for this one, give some of the other guys a rest. So I'll give Lucho the goal for this one.
Yeah, I think Lucho's definitely a good shout. I bigged him up in this episode and the last couple, I think, so it's only fair. I think I've picked him maybe a couple of times now, but I really feel it this time. I'm gonna go. I'll say Logan. Oh, and I mean, I think we can confidently say that Logan will be back for this one. I'll say a 2-1. And I'll go for a Gomez goal. I think he's been running and just working his socks off. And he just deserves to get on the end of something, and maybe a little reward for Gomez's running. But yeah, I do think it's going to be a really like hard fought match, and I think it's going to be one of those that I think Mark will be hoping that we just come out the other side with the 11 players that we went into it with, because at this moment, like, just please nobody else get hurt.
Seriously, yeah.
It's a challenging run in for sure, and we've talked about like the challenge that this side faces. We are now in this run that started on September 29th, in which we play every 3 days for the remainder of the season. We started it off with a win, but we've now drawn twice in a row. So we've got, just the 5 points from a possible 9 to open up this pretty brutal stretch. And we obviously need to lock down some more wins as we go here. Tulsa's quickly followed by a home match against Colorado Springs. So no rest for the weary. And and yeah, so 5 points from a possible 9. It could be better. It could certainly also be worse, thinking about that Colorado Springs game. But we head into this match against FC Tulsa with a chance to bounce back. A ultimately frustrating night for Locomotive even in Copa Tejas glory. There is the reality of the performance, and unfortunately not quite up to snuff for this Locomotive side against San Antonio FC. But as we approach the end of the episode, I hope you've enjoyed. We will try to cover this run in, Mikka, like as best we can. I know we just recorded after the Switchbacks match this past weekend, and then we're back midweek, so we're on a pretty good clip here.
Trying our best, trying to give the people what they want.
Like we talk about, I mean, there's no rest for the players, there's no rest for us, and that's all right. Like we're happy to get on and talk Locomotive, and hopefully under better circumstances against Tulsa. But we will be back for that one. You can find our podcast on any major podcast platform, and be sure to like, subscribe, rate, review, whatever the platform allows. And then you can find us at Twitter as well, at Seriously Loco, and that's where you'll find all the good memes and the wholesome moments as well. Because our contest winner sent in a picture of her and her family, and that did, as I'm rage tweeting during the match, I get this beautiful family photo of a family that got to go to the match via our little contest.
Yeah, shout out Crystal Magdaleno and her family. They were the winners of 4 tickets to see your Locomotive live Copa Tejas, and they look like they had a good time. So yeah. I'm just always happy that we get to do our part in packing the swap. And shout out to everyone that retweeted too, and everyone that entered the contest. There will be more opportunities in the future, so
for sure,
don't fret if you didn't win this time.
For sure, and I always love that moment when someone's like, I've never won anything like this. I never won anything. Like our contests are pretty. You've got a pretty good shot. Like it's not like niche. A really big chance, but you've got a pretty good shot. So if you're thinking like, oh no, well, there's no point because I never win these things, do it. Because you just might. But anyways, that's it for Seriously Loco, and we'll talk to you guys after the Tulsa game. Until then, stay loco.